Okay, hello everyone. Um, Welcome to this new initiative at Aki Diaries interview series called Shades of Green. We are going to do these kind of interview series in coming weeks, and in this new initiative, basically, we will be selecting a theme and we will be inviting guests, we will be inviting experts, practicing architects, people who have been working with that particular field, people who have been exploring that particular theme in their practice, and we will be talking and we will be sharing us with their experience. So we are starting a new series with today's interview, and the series is titled as Shades of Green. Essentially, in this series, uh, we will be talking to various architects, various professionals, and also organizations who have been uh, dedicatedly working in the fields of sustainable design. People who have been working with sustainable building materials, people who have been working with passive cooling. The thing with the sustainable design is that there is not one single way in which you can approach a sustainable design. And as in today's lecture, I think the presentation Sankalpa will talk about that there are various facets, various ways from which you can approach sustainable design. And the idea here is that by talking to these various guests over a period of, let's say, couple of weeks, we will be able to generate discussions and we will be able to understand these various facets, various shades of sustainability. And that is the larger objective of this interview series. I would like to welcome Sankalpa and also Manu here from Thumb Impressions. Sankalpa, welcome.
Thank you, as thank you
And
for inviting us.
yeah, I before we get into, I hand over the to Sankalpa. I would just like to briefly introduce Sankalpa here. Sankalpa is currently teaching at Faculty of Architecture, SEPT University, and he is also one of the founding members of Thumb Impressions Collaborative, a collective that is involved in artisan based construction initiatives and has rich experience in designing and building with materials like earth, bamboo, timber, and steel. He has been actively involved since the last 7 years, working on detailing in bamboo for buildings. He has also conducted several workshops at national level related to bamboo for students. His current focus lies on use of split bamboo as a construction material in the Indian context. Sankalp, thank you so much for giving us time for this interview. And Manu, I am also thankful to you for coming for this interview. Uh, Sankalp, the basic format that we have decided for this interview series is that we invite the guests to share a small presentation, which is prepared by the experts on the topic that they want to talk about. And once you have shared that presentation, we will be open for question answers. There are some questions that I have with me. We will also be taking some questions from the viewers. There are. So I'll just hand over the it to you. So please, can we have your presentation?
Yeah, thank you, as for inviting. I will share the screen and then we can start. So thank you for inviting and good morning, everyone. So today's I would say, a format which is both a mix of presentation and interview is quite interesting. So what we have done is that we have made a small presentation, and then it would be followed up with the dialogue between both of us. So today I represent Thumb Impressions, and because I'm showing a lot of work related to practice. And Thumb Impressions is basically a team of 4 members right now, and their key interest, I would say, is largely in construction to begin with, and obviously then it sort of touches various other aspects of architecture. We thought that today's presentation should be titled as Process, Contradiction, Challenges. And I have put hope in sort of a separate, because we hope that in the process of discussing process, contradiction, and challenges, one would be able to see different facets of hope. Uh, so really, we don't want to touch upon the word hope, but it was important to put in. And this topic, process, contradiction, and challenges, is geared towards a young practice of 7 years, trying to venture into the realm of architecture, and then trying to see the domain within which their interest lies, what is unfolding for them. What we'll also do is we'll just give a highlight of some of the things we are doing. So 1 or 2 samples projects we'll be showing you, and that will sort of trigger certain discussions which we can have later on. Now, what is important for us here to sort of at least inquire about, and based on our experiences, it's a diagram which says that on the lower portion is an image, and on the upper portion is deeper consciousness. And these are 2 different extreme ends of issues of environment. So based on the practice, what we are slowly realizing is that at an extreme, people are selling sometimes luxury in terms of green, which are merely consumptions, and at another point, or at another facet of it, is a deeper awareness about the environment. And somewhere in between is this journey which all of us are having. So on the left is a client, and on the right is the architecture team. So the imagination of green for the client is at one point somewhere in the scale, and on the other side, the idea of the green for an architect is somewhere else. And once a project comes in, there is a constant negotiation between the two. And somewhere within a zone will lie this idea of issues of environment which one is concerned about. Now, here I want to also point out, at least not from the point of view of our team members, but at least from my point of view, that somebody asked me the question that if it would have been 1970s and 80s, and if you guys would have been educated in 1970s and 80s, what would you have been doing? Then I said, certainly that time I would have been thinking about working with concrete and steel. I mean, and because the time was different and the time demanded it. But today's time in which we have been educated and have lived is a different time, and it is important that we are developing a content for not only today, for the time to come. And we realize the fact that environment in that sense is an extremely important. But at the same time, we are dealing with profession, and therefore once we deal with professions, we have to deal with realities of the profession. So the process is important, because only once we identify the parts of anything, we would be able to refine it. Contradictions, because there are various factors which are working simultaneously. So for us, the factors related to construction process, material, artisanal skills are important, but then there are other project level feasibility which works with it, which includes conditions of the site, the demand of the project, or let's say the aspiration of the clients. And so there are various things which are working together, which in a sort of a narrow architectural sense, we can call it synthesis. But here, to sort of make it explicit, we want to call it contradictions. And these contradictions starts working to sort of to sort of deal with issues of this kind. Now, obviously, when the moment there are contradictions, there are challenges, and the challenges are of a multiple kind. I will take the next slide to sort of little bit elaborate on that. So there is a space for such a practice to happen. So constantly, when some of the people who have already been working in this area, like for example, Biome has been working, Chitra has been working, Hunashala has been working. There are multiple young and so Dust Studio has been working. There are multiple young and sort of people who have been working in this area. Um, so so they have been trying to create some kind of a space for all of us to get into that space, but that space is still a space that needs to be broadened up. And with that space comes the discussion about space of architecture. And so I have separated it consciously to sort of make that point. Can we ask Sardul to either join through Facebook Live or sort of admit
Yes.
it, either of the case?
Sorry. Yeah, Sankalp, please.
Yeah. So now what I have done is on the left and on the right, which means X and the Y axis, I have put some of the factors which we often encounter when we are dealing with these issues. So typical are choices of material, sources of material, processing, comparison of natural to industrial materials in terms of its behavior and finishes. So which means some people wants to think that the natural material would behave in the same manner as sort of say, let's say, industrial material, or in the way in which you want to treat concrete, you want to treat ram dirt. So there are all these aspiration, all these kinds of questions which emerges. Then artisanal skills or ability to deal with the issues of climate, typically sun, wind, and rain. Then durability, cost, construction defects, time, which is very impatient these days, aesthetic preference, waste, and its. So there are these multiple factors which keeps on working with each other. And once they start working with each other, one will realize that if we start sort of connecting some of these, then they start opposing each other. And so diagrammatically, what I have done is I put some of the example to show that once they start opposing to each other, there needs to be some kind of a resolution or some kinds of an informed decisions that needs to be made in order for work to sort of happen. And it is important to reveal this because these are the difficulties and the challenges, which is an everyday sort of affair in a practice of this kind. So let me now sort of get into some of the examples. Then in the end, I will talk about some other facets which are important. So here, for example, this is a small residence which we have been working on, and it has just got completed. This is a very small plot of around 60 square yards, which means around 50 square meters. And if you look at these plots, the plot largely faces towards south and towards east. So the south and the east are sort of the areas in which it is facing. And because climate is one of the concerns, therefore, if you look at in the way we have organized, is very clear that if you are dealing with a 50 square meter of area, the circulation has been optimized to sort of remain at somewhere at the center, and then you create two sets of space. But the space which is facing to the left, which is facing the direction of east and the south, has got at least both in terms of breeze as well as in terms of light, has got better possibility. But once you start looking at the space to the right, you start realizing that there needs to be some more way in which the circulation needs to take care of. So on the right, if you look at the section, the first section, there is some kind of a vent which goes and sort of connects to the top, and that's how we are able to take care of both natural light and the breeze. And the idea, of course, is that as you increase the natural light, therefore you reduce the other artificial light, and therefore you will also reduce your electricity loads, etc. So in a way, as far as possible, working with natural elements. And this is Surat. So obviously in a Surat, it's a hot and humid climate. So you need a lot of porosity for breeze to pass by. And so we also do some kind of a climate analysis to see that how at different times, what will be the response to the facade and therefore what will happen inside. So if you look at, there are 4 levels to it, very clearly diagrammatically, even if you want to look at it, the circulation is in between and then there are 2 sets of space. So actually, conceptually, the staircase block is the mediator between the 2 space, and the wall abutting the staircase blocks are the one which is building up relationship between both the spaces. So you will see in the images that I'll show you that there is a relationship that has been built between these 2 spaces. So you see that the staircase, wherever we get little opportunity, we try and articulate as far as possible. So you look at, this is an asymmetric loading. We have used the folds of the metal and taken strength of it, and then we have detailed out this staircase. So there are few levels at which this is there in order to further accentuate the porosity and the relationship between 2 spaces. The plasters are basically lime plaster, and that's why you will be able to see these kind of finishes. So the idea of all of this project has been, as far as possible, to encourage various kinds of artisanal skills to come together and sort of therefore create opportunity for them as well. The slabs are flat slabs, because with flat slabs we are able to get a clear soffit, and therefore you will be able to get the access to light very clearly. So this is a relationship of between the kitchen and you see the living areas. This is one of the other levels where you see the 2 bedrooms and how they sort of are worked out. And then you see at the upper level that it has been opened up, and then you can see the way in which lights are coming from the light wells. So the idea is constantly to try and use natural light as far as possible, and use all the artisanal skills that we have been employing so far. So these are some of the images of that. So I'll just touch upon few aspects of this project as a diagram. I'll not use this diagram in the later one because that will exhaust the time which is required for us to discuss. But if you look at the choice of material, then on the x-axis, the choice of material is related to the sourcing of the material. And at the same time, it is related to aesthetic preference. Now, in this project, the client is coming with the fact that they have a particular aesthetic preference, and therefore they are not too much concerned about really green. And in that sense, you are trying to negotiate yourself to figure out to what extent you will be able to factor in some of these things. So for example, we have created openings, and we wanted it to sort of build it using steel and timber, but ultimately with the pushing of the client, it got into UPVC, which is very common these days. So there are areas in which we struggle where we are able to sort of convince it, and there are certain areas which we are not able to convince. So if you look at sun and wind, again the aesthetic preference dominates over some other things. So there are, we have also represented it using intensities of the line. So it's a diagram that is basically a reflection for all of us. It can be more complex than what I have done right now, but to show that there are contradictions which are existing. So with the process, contradictions exist, and the moment there is contradictions, there are negotiation and challenges that we have to factor in. One of the other concerns have been, for all of us, have been to simultaneously look at space and structure together. And how do we articulate space in a way that the structure gets revealed? And this is a diagram from some other project that we are taking. But if you look at very clearly that this diagram has got filigrees, but at the same time, the walls are getting in and out to reveal various ways in which the filigree can be revealed. And this has been one of our obsession to sort of with space, how do you work with structure and how do they come together? And therefore, some of the projects like this where where you are trying to make something like a yogshala, it becomes much more easier to work on some of these lines. So it's a very simple, if you want to call it a pavilion kind of a structure, and which uses steel and sort of timber as a bearing member, and bamboo as a spanning member. And if you look at it, you will see that based on orientations, we have selectively opened some portions. So you look at the north versus south, you will realize that there are certain ways in which openings have been articulated, because we know that from the south we'll get the vertical sun, but from the north you can really open up. And this is one of the inside view of it, if you see the space in the manner in which it would come out. So you see some of the, so one way in which you see the relationship between the bearing member and the spanning member, and obviously the span goes around 12 meters, etc. So you will have to take care of the way the spanning members are articulated. So again, an experiment, modeling experiment, you get your profile, and then the vertical members of the spanning is basically moment connections, and then you develop various details of it, where you are trying to work out a detail that is able to uh, take care of the differential diameter of bamboo. So how do you work with a varying diameter of bamboo using universal joints? And that's one of the most difficult part of working with bamboo, because the material is not uniform. So you will have to develop a detail which is adaptable to changing dias of material. So we have done, because we have factored in the various ranges of diameter which are there, and instead of holding it fully, we are holding it partially, because that would be able to fit in various diameters. So some of the images of that. So this project is about to start now. The other kind of work which we do is consultation project on detailing. So this was M Pavilion by Bijoy Jain, and this was one of the early projects which we did where we were bamboo consultants. So right from detailing to sourcing of the bamboos, everything was done by us. So obviously the idea comes from Bijoy, which I don't think that I would articulate it here, but our concerns were more in terms of detailing, and Varup was engineer. So in the early part, because of paucity of the data, Varup came up with a very heavy structure. But later on site, working with the whole team, we were able to sort of work out various details, and then we were able to test, and then we were able to suggest with them, and of course they did calculation that certain you don't require so much amount of material in order to do something of these kind. So eventually on the right you see the final setup, and then the outcome of which you saw in the early part of the presentation. So it was in that sense quite a challenging, because at the same time it was really nice to work in a space, because right from the beginning the space and sort of experiment in trying to figure out the structural system details were working simultaneously. So we were always doing 1:1 and trying to correlate with space. So it was a very unique experiment where you are almost working like a furniture designer, where they have a scope of working 1:1. Here was a project with Studio Mumbai where we were able to do something of this kind. We also did some work for Jwalant, where he wanted to work for an outhouse, and of course in again bamboo, but the lower deck is steel, and then the bamboo starts. When we want to detail out some of these projects, we want to ensure uh, that it is in a way it sort of supports the ways of living. So if and as well as detailing. So if you look at the corner conditions are timber and not bamboo. But then we have worked out rest of the other conditions, we have bamboo. So the idea here is that you don't get obsessed with the material of one kind, but really try and mix materials so that each of them support each other in terms of space and as well as in terms of details. So you see some of the inside view of these materials. Uh, One of the challenges, if I don't know whether you're noticing this or not on the roof, one of the challenges of working with bamboo, especially in relationship to the roof, is the leveling of the sheet, because the leveling of the sheet has to follow one plane, whereas the dia of the bamboo is varying. So how do you maintain a level in order to fix the sheets? And these are some of the inside view of these. We now, some of the projects we have been also getting into is urban project, but related to water bodies, where again the concerns are environmental. So this is a project which we have been doing, and it would be soon in execution stage. The design stage and rest of the other stuff is complete. The client is Irrigation and Flood Control Department of Delhi, and then the project for from the perspective environment was given to NEERI, and the NEERI eventually gave to Thumb Impressions and Rootbridge to work out the design part of it. So we have been doing, so I'm showing you one of the projects. There are 29 water bodies that we have been doing. This is one of them. And soon it would be. So the idea, of course, the idea is always two parts. One is to restore the value of the water to what it was. And then second is to look at what is periphery and create a context for an urban life to sort of occur around it. So there is a cultural value to it as well as there is an environmental value to it. So this project is almost like an early stage project of trying to move to an urban design kind of a project. So this is almost like trying to put the first step before you can get into an urban design project. So obviously there are some, so the treatment of water and all those details is coming from NEERI, and the design part we are trying to do it. So as far as possible, we have been taking care of the edge conditions and have just done some basic stuff which is required in order for an active urban life to happen. Now, so this project will sort of get into execution soon. And these are some of the images of these projects. And the planting scheme or the kind of species are related to the local environment. We have been also doing projects which are related to execute. So there's a project which we did for Sanal, and if you look at these projects, we were helping him to sort of detail out as well as execute stabilized rammed. So some of the so these are some of the consultation project on detailing of SRE. So this project we have been doing for Anjali and Chintan, and the architect is Naman. And we have been getting into some of these other expressions which is possible when you are working with rammed earth, and these are the pigments and some of the layers which has been used. As far as possible, we try and use natural colors, but sometimes we are also using pigments which are artificial. So this is where the question sometimes can come, where you can think about that, what is the percentage of cement that has been used. So in some of these cases, there are 7% cements. Why are you using, let's say, an artificial? So these are some of the contradictions that happens because you are constantly dealing with a project where clients have got certain aspirations, and you are trying to convince that what works. An architect also tries and sort of figures out that there is a value for it, but then pushes ahead and tries and explore further. And then there are other things that there are other kinds of questions that starts emerging, which are contradictory and challenging. We have been also doing some work for bus ride. So this is a poured earth form work. This we did in our Surat workshop, and then later on transported to Bombay, where it has been worked out. Sorry, this was for Studio A23. That's the name of the studio. I think Faizan and Samir is part of the studio. This work, Alila Diva, where we worked with poured earth. This work we did for bus sites. So I think this is a very long wall, more than 20 meters long. We are doing another work for Studio A23. This work is in Jaipur. Again, we are trying to work with rammed earth and stone. So this work started pre-pandemic. So of course, with the pandemic, many of the projects has got delayed. This is the work which we did for Core Design Studio. This is a lime plaster. You can see. This is work which we did for Tulna Akruti Studio. Then we have been also doing a lot of community work. So this work in which from our side Manu was involved, and with Alia and Associates and PYST, this work which we did for earthquake. So one sample house we did for in Nepal, and this project also got recognition. So I think it got HUDCO one of the awards of the HUDCO housing. We have been also working with our network organization, Hunarshala, People in Center, and the studio to work on projects which are related to rural development. This is one of the projects which we did where we documented entire housing types, rural housing types of Gujarat. And then we divided into various zones, and then we proposed various houses that can be made out of it. And then at different regions, based on the cost constraint and based on the strength of the region, there are some proposals that we have made. We also do a lot of workshop and R&D. So a lot of workshop with students and R&D. When we do, most of the time we are always pushing ourselves to try and do something new. So all this, what you see, there is one or the other detailing that we have been able to work out. So some of the sample examples I'm sure. So every time you are doing, you test it here, because then later on, once you get a larger project, you are able to execute it. So this project we did with PYHT. So detailing using split bamboo. Then this is the project which this is again the workshop which we did with for workshop for MSU students. Again, there are some way in which we have detailed out. Then there are all kinds of other experiments which we keep on doing with lime plaster. This is so one of the wing is of thumb impressions is involved in design and wing. Similarly, there is other wing which is involved in furniture design. So some of our furniture work. So this is basically Tanera, one of the Tata products. So these are the furnitures which we have put in their showroom. Then there are some small and big projects which we keep on doing. So maybe coming to the end, what I want to show in this diagram is that there are 4 components to the work as of now: detailing, material, artisan, and I have not put the third, which is space. Now the space is something which is at least little bit easier to deal with it, because you have got your own skills around that. Now, if we have to practice it, we have to develop an ecosystems around the delivery. So if, for example, if we are trying to work with the idea of green, then there has to be an ecosystem like the ecosystem of when we have to do a work in concrete. There is a market chain, there is already an ecosystem existing for it. Now, what happens is that if you look at the left side, there is an ecosystem of delivery, and the purpose of this ecosystem for all of us is to push this to be a mainstream. Because unless until we don't start pushing it to a mainstream, it will be one of a project where we can satisfy ourselves, but that would not lead to large-scale changes. And I'm already seeing that there are a lot of young practitioners who are doing, and their numbers are large. It's not small numbers. And because we have to focus on making it mainstream, we have to understand that there has to be a creation of market, and there has to be an offering of better product. Now I am using this term, which is a management term I'm using, but eventually when we get into practice, we have to use some of these terms, because unless until there is no creation, and unless until we don't offer a product which is of a very good quality, merely to be sensitive to environment is not enough. Because it will lead to certain kind of a clientele, but it will not lead to large scale change. And in order to have large scale change, we have to push for that. Now, so on the right, the diagram where we are saying detailing and which is connected to artisan and material is very central to it. Now, when you see the relationship between artisan and detailing, in our current time, there is always a discussion between standardization and customization. On the right side, when you talk about detailing and materials, there is an issue of from hand to mechanization, automation. So all of these are industrial way which are there. Okay, and on the left is standard. So overall, when you see the upper curve, you see that industrial modes of productions are something which you are confronting with all the time. Now the issue is that you are dealing with a lot of other complexities of time, complexities of supply of material when you're dealing with natural materials, sustained supply, scientific understanding of the material. So on the other side, you're dealing with looking at artisans not as single person but sometimes as guild, or sometimes get into medium and small scale industry or enterprise. So the idea is that unless and until one is not able to look at the real picture, because what is happening in construction industry is that, let's say, customization becomes expensive. So what somebody is doing is breaking the buildings into building elements, then trying to make those building elements into industrialized ways of production. Because the moment you start making it into industrialized ways of production, the cost reduces. So you create a market for that. Once you create a market for that, you have moved into industrial modes of production, and therefore you are leaving customizations or supporting artisanal guilds, etc. So there are these multiple challenges which are happening, and you are traversing into all of this realm to say that eventually you will be able to reach a level which would be an informed level, perhaps a balanced level, but we don't know that. And therefore it is important to sort of look at these three four relationships and what is happening in sort of today's time. So I think I would stop here, and this is our team. I would stop here, and then we can get into discussions where we can pick up some of the points and then move ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Sankalp. I think it was quite an informative presentation, and since you shared this presentation earlier, we had also had a chance to go through it in very much in detail. And now, after going through this, there are we were trying to understand what exactly the title that you had given, the process, contradictions, and challenges, and hope would mean to. But when I look at your diagrams, in which you have very clearly explained as to what the process is, what the contradictions are, and what the challenges are, it becomes very clear as to what the process is. And in my opinion, after going through your presentation, what it looks like is that a process is basically it starts with a set of criterias that you mentioned on those x-axis and y-axis, where you have a list of criterias. Certain criterias come from the material and the construction point of view, and then there are certain criterias which come from the design and the spatial requirement point of view. And then there is always a tussle. There are contradictions that start happening between these various aspects, and that sort of leads to contradictions. Okay, and uh, while so that's one part of the contradiction. And on the other hand, you talked about in terms of dealing with the client. Okay, so you shared a diagram in which you have shown that there is a kind of a datum line that you are constantly trying to achieve uh, with respect to, let's say, the client's awareness, or let's say the willingness to engage with the issues of sustainability. And as a aware designer, your your efforts, so you are trying to always sort of negotiate and trying to create a datum which is sort of a balanced zone for both of them. uh, can you share some of your because many a times it happens with the clients, particularly with the private clients, and not most of the time that the clients are willing to engage in the issues related to the sustainability. So then, what are the ways in which you sort of negotiate? What are the ways in which you sort of get down on a level platform and start creating a dialogue with them? Can you share a couple of experience?
Yeah. So so for example, recently we are doing a corporate house for a client who is trying to set up a factory for biofuels. So now, if you look at it, the venture is biofuels. The client approached us looking at our Instagram post. So that is one thing is happening is that their clients were so once they approached us and when we started discuss, so they just approached us to do some small bit of work and then to design their furnitures, etc. So later on, once we get into that work, the point is it's once we start practicing, we start realizing that there is a skill to enter into a client's domain. And to enter into a client domains means that when if one is discussing, we are trying to find an entry point where we can get into the idea of environment. And then to sort of or let's say to sort of support it in a way or to layer it in a way that it actually empowers and makes the project better. So for example, when we have started working now with this, so one of the things, because it's a factory, obviously, we one of the things which we say that okay, let us work with steel, let us work with timber, and let us work with either waste brick, rework brick, which Keserjan does, or let's say hollow blocks, etc. But then the client comes and say that okay, but it has to be, but we also want corporate's image. So corporate image means glass, etc. And then so now here we are dealing with materials. If you want to look at it, steel which can be recycled. Okay, we are dealing with glass which we don't have much choice because, but how intelligently we are able to push for that, that's a discussion. But then what we have brought in is sort of shading device with the use of bamboo and solid bamboo, because solid bamboo would behave almost like timber, and it is quite durable. So the thing is, in the negotiation between them, then we say that if you use that, you would be able to at least communicate to your people that your building in that sense is sensitive to that. We propose lime plaster. We say that if you are using bamboo artisans will come in. So in spite of the fact that you are corporate, it doesn't mean that you are not using agencies of other sustainable practices. So you have got some image which you want, but then it has to be informed and layered by something. Now, not all the clients are able to deal with. I mean, not all the clients are like that. But what I have realized, and we constantly struggle, is that there are two stages to the client. One stage to the client is when we are discussing it, when we layer it, and really it empowers them, and it really helps them to sell in this particular case. The other challenge will come once it starts building up, because once it starts coming up, then the challenge will be the first time the client is able to visualize space when it is in a sketch, and that is the time when again some kind of intervention starts happening, and that negotiations becomes very difficult. So to give you the second example for it, like the residence which we showed you, the small one, the challenge in a hot humid climate is that you have to get in light, but you have to also get in breeze. And that is why you find that the South Gujarat houses are more like a porous house if you look at the traditional houses. But the client is pushing us to sort of pushed us to sort of say that whatever you do, we will not use we will use UPVC glass window. Now, the moment you use UPVC glass window, obviously you are using sliding windows and things of those kind, not partially open, which means that the amount of light you are getting is in much more than the breeze that you want, and that will create glare. So, in spite of the fact that we showed them all the analysis, etc., they were not ready, and therefore we had to put in. Now, when we put in, then we say that, but the lures are important. So then we detail out a screen which is about to be fit in right now. The idea was that then how much you can cut in. So there is a constant struggle at every point to sort of offer a better, but then dealing with an image is always a difficult thing. So here, in spite of scientific, putting all the data, heat gain, and all of those doesn't work, because Yeah, because there is an image that you're so there are these sometimes you succeed that's why there are challenges, there are contradictions. So if let's say if we want to say that it's a sustainable project in that sense, it won't fit in. But if you say that the kind of struggle that has happened in order to do little bit of what you can do, then there's a possibility to look at in a much more nuanced manner.
So, in a way, we can say that datum line that you showed in that diagram is a kind of a flexible, based on how much a client is willing to understand and participate in the issues of the sustainable design. That datum line can be made adjustable kind of a thing, and that zone can be redefined with respect to
Yes.
the client and also the context of the project.
Yeah, so it's not a line, it's
Yeah,
always a zone.
actually a zone. You have shown a
Mm.
green zone,
Yeah.
which is a sort of balanced place where the client and the thumb impression come together and say, okay, now this is the minimum that we must, make sure that it happens. I think that is the example of the house I was looking at, and the section is really nice. The way in which you have managed to create that vertical draft, and the way the hot air rises, and it allows the cooler air to come in from the lower levels. So, and also because there is a split level that you have managed to achieve, so there are some very interesting spatial qualities which are there, and also there is a kind of a simplicity of materials and the material palette, which is something that I really enjoyed in that particular project of yours. So if I look at in that particular project, mainly what you have managed to achieve is the passive pulling part of it. When I look at the sustainability point of view, when I look at some of your, so I was just trying to see what are the kind of a range of approaches you have when we talk about the sustainable. So let's say when in this particular project it was the passive pooling which came to the forefront, and the other issues of the building, the rammed earth and bamboo sort of took the back seat. Then there are other projects like the Yogshala that you are doing right now, like the pavilion that you did for the Studio Mumbai. In those particular project, your material exploration actually comes to the forefront of it. And so that's one thing. And the third approach which I could figure out is the project that you shared of this water body in NCR, and the kind of the swab system with which you've managed to achieve the wastewater treatment, and the way you have managed to rejuvenate that water body. So in that we are talking about sustainability from the point of view of, let's say, resources, uh, you know uh, so that to me it looks that that's the third approach. Are there some, so these are the three things that I could actually figure out. There could be more. Are there any more such approaches which you have been working on which are not part of this project?
See the so for example, obviously once you are working with all of these, as far as possible you will take care of, let's say, water harvesting and things of those kind. For sure you would be taking care of orienting your roof. For example, now we are doing a project in which the roof angle has been worked out such that you would be able to put solar panels so that the building itself is sort of sustaining, including water harvesting and everything is there. So that's another sort of way. So another way to sort of look at it, which we have not shown because there are many projects now which are on site. So there are large projects which we are doing where we are using again materials like poured, like stabilized adobe, and we are making an institution in near Darjeeling where we are using all of these and then sort of working out. See, the point is we are coming from the so one of the strength or one of the thing is that four of us, I think Manu, Nikhil, Milind, and all of us are coming from a perspective of making and construction. So The moment making comes in, there are certain features which are there. I mean, rainwater, all of these are all right. But we know that a major part of it is construction and material because they are one of the most polluting elements. Construction industry is most polluting, which means that if we have to take the bull by the horn, we have to get into construction. We don't have to, because rest of the things are slightly easier to get in because they are features. So when you are talking about house, the house is the space is also an outcome of climate
Yes.
as well as other needs of the house. But so at all the projects, as far as possible, we ensure that climatically it is well taken care. Now, but the point is, we still think at this point in time that we need to get into more measurements. Right now, the level of measurements I would say is still experiential with little bit of measurement. We need to get into absolute numbers after some time. For example, Manu has been trying now to calculate the amount of water that is required per cubic meter of rammed earth wall. Because we have now got into a level where we want to measure all of these. So you know that the amount of sweet water that you need because tomorrow's time. So if you look at the data of Gujarat, in Gujarat, a large part of our construction industry is dependent on sweet water from Narmada. Now that's not a great sort of thing to be, but at the same time, from an architecture point of view, what it does is it challenges us to make a building which is not only harvesting water, but from a perspective of detailing, it is using less water. So one way is management of water, but another way is that is it possible to work out details? And that is why now we have got into measurement of water in detailing. Now, obviously, steel's embodied water is very high, but the point is steel's recycle value is very high. So for us, steel is a wonderful material to sort of get into some of the things which otherwise natural materials will not be able to do, especially related to spanning, etc., or related to junctions, joinery, etc., when you have to standardize something. So this is another domain apart from what you said, where we are getting into it and we want to get into much more measured because tomorrow we have to give numbers. We can't shy away from the fact that we will not give numbers.
And the numbers are also important because you just mentioned towards the end of your presentation that if you want these things to become mainstream, right? Right now, we always keep using the word alternative technology, alternative materials. But if you want these technologies to become the mainstream, you will have to eventually get down into the numbers and make it more relevant for the market also, right? Make it more approachable for the common people also, because when fine, maybe there might be some people who will going to ignore the numbers, but at the end of the day, a practical product is what sells in the market. So I'm using very market terminology out here because uh, it's high time we stop using the word alternative technologies
Yeah,
for
yeah.
these technologies, because the kind of organization that we are trying to talk about is an MSME, right? It's a medium small scale. It's a kind of an industry, and I think it only when we can take it to that level of perfection, like what you're saying, that we can measure as to what is the amount of water that we are going to use in 1 cubic meter of rammed earth, then I think we can sit when we sit on a negotiation table with a person, with a client, then there can be an informed debate can happen. We can rise above the sentiments and we can say that look, these are the numbers. And this also brings me to another question which related to it is in terms of economy. Uh, how because currently when we use the word alternative technologies, how can we compare it in terms of economy to, let's say, a conventional brick in concrete construction?
So we should consider at par. Okay, so the question starts happening is that it would be same, almost the same square feet cost of construction. So let's say let us assume 1700 say 2000. I mean, if you are considering normal conventional 2000, let's say, so almost similar to that, you will get it. The question that starts happening is a question which is more structural. The question is that when we approach a natural material and the ways of living in a natural material built building from a perspective of the way we are living in a concrete and brick building, then there comes a problem. Because see, the thing is, each house in the way it is built requires a particular way of operating and operationalizing that house. And in order to operationalize the house, one needs to have a certain discipline. For example, if in tribal areas you see people doing lipai, then they know every week they have to do it, or every month they have to do it. Wrong or right or aspirational, non-aspiration is a different matter. So similarly for this, if we are getting into this kind of a thing, the people have to be aware about the fact that if you are using natural materials, there are some things which has got this kind of a durability. But the question that often what I want to connect back to is that one has to understand that if you are making a building which is infinite years of age, then the problem is you are also taking away job opportunities of thousands of people, because at one point of time I can understand if you are making some kind of reactors, say nuclear reactors. Yeah, you are making your house. 35 years is concrete's life. Now the problem with concrete slabs are that they are not durable. Anything which is in bending is not durable for a long time if it is reinforced. Now, if you sort of think about from a point of view of materials like say our old city, so we went to Patan and we saw that there were typical binders and joists, and then there were planks, and then there were, you can remove it, you can use concrete. Now those buildings are 500, 600 years. It's an intelligent construction. It simple says that your steel or timber has to be outside the concrete or outside your pouring material. The moment it does that, your repair cycle increases, which means artisans get job, which also means that the life of the building increases, but it increases in a natural way. So the thing is, in the way in which construction is thought, and in the way in which the construction is strategized, it creates a future prospect for that. But if you are creating an RCC building, then one that after 35 years your repair is going to be exorbitant, or you have to break it. So there are, I mean, there are issues, there are finer issues which we have to get into it when we are proposing something. So I mean, I just gave you an example to sort of to explain that what does that mean.
Yeah. Uh, uh, I actually, I have been also involved in with teaching, and when I looked at this particular project of the Yogshala, that's one of my, personal favorite, amongst all the projects that you have shown. But in terms of the way you have been doing a lot of research R&D with bamboo as a material, with split bamboo as a material, and what I could figure out that there are two kinds of detailing, or the two types of buildings are there in your current presentation. One in which we have a conventional way of tying with thread. The joint is, where you take the thread and sort of, there are different ways, different knots, and you make the joint. And the second one in this Yogshala that you showed, you are trying to incorporate joints which has
Industrial.
industrial. You are trying to move towards some kind of a standardization. That is one. And second, as you correctly mentioned, the approach, because the span is also more about 12 meters. So the starting point is your structural explorations, the one you showed the chain hanging, and then you try to sort of find a perfect catenary shape for the thing. So these, to me, seems that the two ways in which currently you are sort of working with the bamboos, which one is your personal favorite, or is there something more to it than what I have observed?
Well, so I think that one of the thing is there are our personal interest and there is also the team. So many of the design projects, at least at right now, what we are doing is me and Milind are involved at at most of the first stages, etc. But then we get a lot of feedback from Manu and Nikhil and other team members. So the way we operate is that there are preliminary things which we do, then it gets resolved, then we get some feedback, etc. Now, so let's assume that as a process in our office. Now, uh, we all think the fact that understanding of structure is key to understanding of detailing and is key to understanding of sustainability, because only by understanding structures you are able to articulate forces. When you are able to articulate forces, you know the consequence of articulation of one against the other. Now, what the problem with case study methods of doing is that the case study methods requires exhaustion of case study to be able to classify it and then study and say that this is based on analysis and you are doing it. But if you have an understanding of structures and if you have certain basic data, then the possibility to articulate and to understand are much quicker. First. Second is that your freeness to be able, your courage to be able to deal with space is much higher. Because here you see, the thing is where what the space is being occupied by material, and that space which is occupied by materials is the domain of the structure. It is when a material occupies space, it is occupying for the sake of structure. That's the beginning point, because it is through that the load gets transferred, etc. Now it's a different matter that people see texture and then they realize that through light they are sort of gaining it. But the primary thing is that if it is not going to stand, nothing is going to happen, which means that the sensitivity towards articulation of structure is fundamental to the way we approach. And that is why so for example, if you look at it, that yoke shara is basically a bending, whether we like it or not. But we know that once we know it's a bending, now we know that the moment we start bracing things, etc., we in this kind of a scale, we get too much element in that space. And then it starts sort of not working, so the structure starts dominating too much that it does not support the activity of the space. So which means that we had to get into an orthogonal form, take the bending, get it to the end, and therefore it was easier to get into a vertical member. The moment you add the vertical member, obviously it's not triangulated, which means that the connection will be rigid. And therefore you get into a moment connection. The moment you get into a moment connection, which means that there will be a splitting in the bamboo at those points. So you know that at those points you will have to also tie the hold the bamboo like that, which means that simultaneously there will be an industrialized component which is adjusting with the diameter of the bamboo. At the same time, we will have to use tying member to sort of take care of it. Now, if you remember, Simon Well has done a wonderful detail with washer in that. We are not doing it where the washer is almost like a cup shape with a saddle. So when you are trying to sort of apply a torque onto the nut, what is happening is reverse process is being happening in the washer. So the washer is also trying to hold that fiber. So you can get into from that scale detail to this scale detail simply because you have an understanding of structure. If you don't have an understanding of structure, now one of the other advantage with us is that we have so for example, Manu is an engineer, but he also brings the idea of expression in structures, and he has a sense of space. So the thing is, now here we sometimes get confused that who is doing what role, and so that team is a good, in a sense that the team is a good, that somebody from a technical part can comment, and sometimes we have to change it because some of his comments are really very sharp, and vice versa, and sometimes we also do for the structures in which. So in that sense there is a synergy, but there is also a commitment, and I think that happens because I think we can't get rid without structure. So in that sense, that's the way we approach things.
Yeah.
And then we obviously know that, see, we very quickly resolve space because it doesn't take a lot of time to resolve space the moment the client give you a brief. Then we start playing with other layers. And obviously it is going to happen that you can't explore everything in one. So within the niche that you get, you explore.
Yeah.
So the staircase was a niche to really reveal structure, whereas rest of them were RCC's, flat slab and columns
So,
in the other project.
yeah. So you keep looking for these windows of opportunity in certain projects, or even within a project, certain elements where you could take the structural and exploration to, uh, 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 let's say, what we normally talk about. The form is a diagram of forces. That's the kind of an approach that we can take. So what from that conventional detailing that is adopted in the Melbourne M Pavilion for the also what you are saying has a value to it, because there could be many projects in which you don't need to get into too much of exploration in terms of structure and detailing, where you need the craftsmanship to come and just give you a very simple standing structure. And on the other hand, when you get an opportunity, when you are dealing with large spans, you can get into material and structural exploration, because you know the material and how the material behaves in a much better way. And you also want to respond to the the way the forces are going to flow in terms of the section. So that sounds a very interesting approach to me. I think there was a question from one of the viewer, and I think we have partially answered as to what is the role of the details in all of this. And you just talked about how important the details are from the point of view of a sustainable design. You also talked about a team, and there are diverse kinds of things you are doing. For example, you are also designing, you are also executing, you are also documenting, you are doing urban design. Simultaneously, you are also doing consultation for the other architects. So, what is the kind of a team, and how do you organize yourself? And what is the role of the craftsman in this organization?
Yeah, so let me give you the structure of Thumb Impressions. So so Thumb Impressions has four partners: Manu, Milind, Nikhil, and myself. Earlier, Tejas was also there, but now that he is doing a job, um, he is not there. So four of us are there now. There is a wing which is doing design work. Okay, so you get an architecture project, you sort of do it. There is a wing right now headed by Manu, who is looking at detailing and execution aspect of it. Then there is a furniture wing who is looking at the design and detailing of furniture. So our furniture wing has got a full-fledged manufacturing unit, and we are designing it, detailing it. So we also do work for other architects. We also design own furniture independently and sort of sell it. Uh, so the moment you get into execution wing, you have an artisan's team. So right now, so now the thing is, we have got right, three fully hired artisans in the team. Rest based on project we have to get in, because right now, apart, so the furniture wing is the only wing right now which is on almost full sustenance. The rest of the wings are struggling. Then the execution wing again is now doing uh, better, and I think that in the next couple of years it would be again sustaining. It's the architecture and the design wing which doesn't earn much, and that's the reality of our profession. Is that the design doesn't. There's no value for architecture, but there's value for construction in here. So to be very frank, our approach is to use other wings of the built environment to reach architecture, because we cannot I don't think that there is a point beyond which our team can get into educating people the value of space, because it has to be done by every schools, every architect, and eventually society. The problem with why we don't have a value of architecture, to me, is because we learn in our school days sociology, economics, civics, what not, anthropology, but we never learn about built environment. Now, to some extent, ecology has been added. So textbook never. So architecture means grandeur. Architecture means some kind of a decoration, which means that architecture is never perceived by the by the mass, which has to come at your 10th and 12th level. The result is you can only explain to them through construction and through all of these processes. And also the fact is that if you start quoting your price only, and as I'm talking as a young firm, only at a certain level, once you establish it, you can do whatever. As a young firm, nobody is ready to pay even what the Council of Architecture says as your fee. Now, so how do you deal with reality at one point of time? The reality to deal with, apart from all the interest, is to find a different route to approach design. And that is why it was important for Thumb Impressions to create an ecosystem for architecture to flourish. Because all of these finally is for the sake of architecture that we are doing all of these. So what it means is that the architecture wing is slowly doing it. So that's why we have got many projects in sort of execution stage, design stage, but we have got a lot of projects which we have already executed for others. Because if you look at from a point of view of simple logic, an architect will not give you a design project, but an architect will give you a detailing and execution project. So which means that we at least we are doing better work and we are being at least fulfilled from a point of view of doing detailing and execution to some extent, because at least we are happy to see some better designs coming in, better work coming in. So that's an so that's why I was talking about an ecosystem. And the ecosystem has to be whole, and we realize that we have to get into all of this, and that's why we have got into all of these, and some of the wing are doing all right, some of the wing are struggling.
Yeah, I think you said it very rightly. Even historically, see, if I look at it, and this is also my personal way of looking at history, is that there has always been two streams. One is a classical architecture. You can look at the history of the palaces and whatnot. And on the other hand, when you look at the vernacular architecture, you know, the now when we look at the classical architecture, there is always a concept of architect, is present there. But when we look at the vernacular architecture, the traditional, when we look at the settlements in cities, there is not a concept of architecture, but there is a concept of a master craftsman kind of a person who has on one hand the sensibility of the spatial requirement of the people, of the need, who is also aware of the climate, who also knows the material and the detailing, and he has a set of a team. And now that is the kind of a setup that one needs to have, and one needs to come out of that council of architecture mode of practice if one needs to make something meaningful. And if you really want to take this from alternative to mainstream, there is no other way but to step out of that white coat and tie image of an architect, and actually take the materials and start dealing with like a master craftsman rather than an architect in a traditional sense. So I think that is the model, and I really appreciate that. I'll just one last portion. In your title you have talked about the process, contradictions, challenges, and in the end you talk about the challenges and hope, right? And you briefly talked about what all is needed at the academic level for people to become more sensible. What are the challenges do you see, and what are the hopes that you have for the future? Let me put it in the other way. You have also been associated with academics for a while, right? You've been doing workshops. How do you think these things, the current architectural education, architecture and design education, needs to change in order for the young architects to sort of go out and start uh, practicing the kind of thing that you have said?
So I think um, maybe it's a good way to sort of end it, and it's a good question. In fact, in 2010, it was the first time uh, both of us started teaching, and you were teaching before that construction, but I joined you, and that was the first time that I started teaching construction after my site works when I was working with in Bihar. Um, Now let's look at what is happening in academics. In academics, historically, one of the classical way was that the students were trained timber, brick, RCC, steel, etc., etc. Now, many of them were trained by engineers. Uh, Many of the engineers practiced, many didn't practice. At one point of time, construction sometimes can become too theoretical if you don't bring the practicing part to it. And similarly, the structure becomes too structured and that you shy away from going to site. And so historically what has happened is that there is a particular way in which construction structure has been taught. So material centric way of construction is a problematic thing. Because has it done historically is that it has not freed people from the idea that you can look at the world independent of material to begin with, and materials can be looked from the perspective of properties. So if you look material from the perspective of property, you free them from the very knowledge that they are bondage to. And the fact is, because you have been always trained them in concrete and brick, you will be always doing concrete and brick. You are thrown with images of buildings of concrete and brick. That's your inception. That's your early training. So you would be so the thing is, that's what is happening, which I think both of us, and I think even Kashi, very clearly we took a departure from that, and we said that either you classify from the perspective of the way you construct, which means casting, molding, and all of those, assembly and all of those kind of a thing, or you look at materials from the point of view of modular blocks or things of those kind. So what you are constantly, or you look at from a point of property, what you're doing is you're trying to dismantle the historical image that we were burdened with. That we have done it. There are few schools who have taken technology in a different way. So they are looking at let's say Sun, a semester where so if I look at it, a good example is the technology curriculum of SEA, School of Environment, and so that school has got a very interesting way of looking at it. So what it does, it breaks up into, it classifies based on the elements of the environment like sun, wind, and all of those. So that's a very intelligent way of looking at it, because then you are looking structure and construction from that point of view, and then you are connecting it directly to environment. And I found that was quite profound to sort of look at it in that way. There's another third way to look at it. The third way is that you look at types. So let's say a type in terms of complexity. So if you look at, the most complex would be a complex factory, and the preliminary would be basic houses, etc., or shops, etc. Now, every time you are training a student, you are bringing in that all the technology related, tutors, or all the domains who are delivering you lecture based on types. So first semester preliminary, people who are dealing with services, all kinds of services, comes and delivers you lecture. So when you start doing that, then you look technologies as servicing architecture, okay, which is not a problem. Whereas when you look at from a point of view of environment, you are looking at a larger domain, and you are cumulatively trying to add and look at various dimensions which would directly connect to environment, which is again an interesting way. What we did historically in CEPT, and I think that we can now move ahead, maybe sometimes when we do the next curriculum. Right now, what we have done is, what we did was, at least in the mode of teaching, we got rid of materials. And we said that it is through construction you look at materials, because then you will have courage to build. And that is why, if you remember, in CEPT we got into, whenever we were teaching together and even independently, we got into making as an important component, because only when a student will have courage to make, then they will be able to face otherwise you take a lot of time, because you don't know what is line and level, basic things of this kind, which means that you are scared when you go to site. So it is not that we are training our students to be artisans, but we are training them to have enough bodily knowledge, because when you're dealing with artisan, you're dealing with a bodily knowledge which has been implicit to them. So unless until you have that knowledge, you are not able to deal with them one to one, because then you are dealing with a sahab and somebody, simply because there is a hierarchical relationship, which is a problematic relationship. What we are training students to have an equal relationship of knowledge. So, artisans are not going to ask you, they are not trying to tell you that this space is of that kind. They are going to say, if you are not going to tell them, they will on their own do it because they know that's the way to do it. So these are three fundamental. I have found out that three important ways in which we have to look at it, and each of them have their own values. Certainly, we have to get out of these material-centric ways of training. And I think material-centric way also case because there are a lot of study on concrete. So one of the material which has got exhaustive research is RCC, because rest of the material we have not done enough research. So, and the last part of it is, I think it is always the architects and engineers who have to come together, because that's the only way we can do something fruitful. We cannot separate it out. And if artisans come together, that's the best combination to have.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end with, and I really remember there are some very good memories of the way we had conducted some of the construction subjects in first years and second years, and there is a great amount of importance of the hands-on in those particular subjects that we established, and the workshop was given an importance. So the bottom line was that you try to bring them out of their comfort zone, and you can, okay, you learn to deal with material, learn to deal with craftsmen, and that's, you can say that that could be the first step, you know which you can, if you can bring that thing at the first year second year level into a student, then you can hope that on that foundation, uh, the subsequent years can build upon. So I think that's a very positive note, I think, to end with. And I must just say, Sankalp, the whole presentation and the discussion was really, really fascinating, and some really interesting points we've made, some really interesting discussions. And I'm, on behalf of my entire team at Archidiaries, I'm extremely, extremely thankful to you and your team at Thumb Impressions and all the artisans. And you agreed on such a short notice to give us an interview, and again, I'm thankful to you for that. And let's hope that we will again, come together and talk about something else, maybe
Yeah, yeah.
in near future. So thank you so much, Sankalpa. And just to sum it up, this is the first interview in this series called as Shades of Green. So next Saturday, 11 a.m., we will be talking to architect Surya Kakani, and similarly, he will be giving a presentation, and he will be talking about how in his practice, he has taken an approach towards building materials, and the talk has been titled as Building Pragmatism. So I hope to see you guys back again next Saturday at 11 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining with us. Thank you, Sankalpa. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Avas. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.